Organisation is predicting that climate warming and changes in rainfall patterns will have a major impact on health throughout Europe.
The arrival of malarial mosquitoes could be the first sign that global warming's having an effect. At the London School of Tropical Medicine, they warn that as our climate gets warmer, this and other diseases will be an increasing threat. Malaria has already reached the USA. In Europe, Italy had its first case last year. The threat of malaria will spread north into Europe from Africa over the next 50 years. Experts say it could eventually be warm enough to develop here in the UK.
We have the mosquitoes which are able to carry malaria. What we don't have is enough warm weather for the parasite to develop in those mosquitoes. And if, as the World Health Organization are predicting, we get a 3 degrees rise in centigrade in the next 100 years, then that could pose a significant increase in the threat of transmission of malaria.
Last year was the hottest on record. Temperatures could rise another 3 degrees in the next century. Gases, some from cars and industry, are making the earth overheat, melting ice caps, bringing more hot weather as well as storms and floods. Heat waves like the one that hit the UK in 1990 could soon be the norm, according to world leaders in climate change at the Met Office in Bracknell.
Well, if you think of a year like 1990, which was about a degree warmer than average, that would be currently a once-in-a-lifetime event, whereas by the middle of the next century, on a sort of typical forecast, that would become an event which would occur every second year.
The scientists say global warming's now a certainty, but no one's done enough research on how our health will be affected. That's what's needed now, so contingency plans can be drawn up to cope with any new disease. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News, Bracknell.
Roberto Bertolini is one of the authors of the report. He's in London for an international conference on climate change. Good afternoon. What does your research show about the way that these more extreme weather conditions are going to affect Europe and the United Kingdom?
Well, this research has been going on for a while, and I think that now we are showing that some early effects of the climate change are already occurring in Europe. And these heat waves are actually one of the first signs, but we are also seeing some changes in the distribution and patterns of allergic diseases, as well as the effects of the extreme weather events like floods, for instance.
How concerned should we be that insects like mosquitoes are becoming far more common in Europe than they used to be and creeping north?
Well, mosquitoes are actually going north, and moving north and moving up in the altitudes in which they are present. This phenomenon is taking place in several areas of Europe. Now, in areas, in countries where the public health system is pretty effective, as it is in Western Europe, for instance, this is a threat that can be managed and controlled. In some other areas where there are conflicts or problems in economical terms, this may be much more difficult to control. So this is an issue that must be taken into consideration. This phenomenon of climate change-related health effects are very much linked to the conditions of the society in which they start to occur.
But do you think we need some early warning systems?
Well, the early warning system are actually very useful and effective if there is somebody then that can respond to this early warning system. And we have also to show, to identify, the adaptation options which are more effective to protect the population for these effects, which might be, applying the same old-fashioned, if you wish, approaches like control of spread of infectious diseases through insecticides and things of this kind. But also maybe we have to identify new means to control new effects, such as the ones associated to heat waves or cold spells.
Roberto Bertolini, thank you very much for talking to us. The British childminder found guilty of shaking a toddler to death in America has spoken for the first time since her conviction. Manjit Basuta, who faces 25 years in jail, says she's innocent, and she's accused the only other adult witness in the case of lying in court.
Manjit Basuta has begun what could be a life behind bars in San Diego Women's Jail. This is the closest that reporters could get to her when she chose to speak publicly for the first time. She hasn't given her side of the story since the day last March when baby Oliver Smith was taken to hospital suffering severe brain injuries.
Manjit Kaur Basuta, guilty of the crime of assault on a child.
She was convicted this week of killing Oliver by shaking him violently and slamming him to the ground. But she says she didn't do it.
I never shook him. I never shook that child.
born in India and now a British citizen, Manjeet Basuta is likely to be sentenced to at least 25 years in jail in California, a state with extremely hard-hitting laws against child abuse. Mrs. Basuta's lawyer is planning to lodge an appeal, arguing that the key witness, a housekeeper, gave false evidence. And he says the medical evidence shows the child could have died from the effects of a fall or a seizure. But it's thought very unlikely the appeal will succeed in setting her free again. Philippa Thomas, BBC News, Washington.
The former disc jockey Richard Baker has been given 4 life sentences for a series of sex attacks on women in the southeast of England last year. Baker was described by the judge as truly depraved and a formidable danger to women after convictions for 13 offences, including 3 rapes. The judge said he'd spend at least 12 years in prison. The name of Albert Einstein is synonymous with genius, and we might say he was one of those people with a brain the size of a planet. It now seems there may be some truth in the description because scientists have found that in one crucial region, his brain actually was much bigger than normal. And that, according to a paper in the medical journal The Lancet, could explain his remarkable abilities.
Albert Einstein is famous for his theories of relativity. He's considered one of the 20th century's greatest minds, and his equation, E = mc², showed that huge amounts of energy released in nuclear explosions can be produced by small amounts of matter. Einstein died aged 76 in 1955, and within hours of his death, his brain was removed and preserved. Small sections were sent all over the world to be analysed, most of them ending up with the pathologist, Dr. Thomas Harvey, who was tracked down by the BBC's Arena programme 5 years ago.
Just so lucky to be there when he died and get to do the autopsy.
The latest study by scientists in Canada made anatomical comparisons between Einstein's brain and those of 85 men and women with normal intelligence. It found that Einstein's brain was similar to the others, apart from the parietal region, which is strongly associated with mathematical thought and imagery. Einstein's was 15% wider. People often say the sign of genius is in making surprising connections. Well, the enlarged region of Einstein's brain also didn't have the groove which normally runs through it, and the researchers believe this allowed the brain to make more connections between the brain's nerve cells. Although some experts dispute the conclusion that geniuses may be born but not made.
I think it's more likely that it became different as a result of the particular mental activities he engaged in, the particular kinds of things he was doing.
So it may take another Einstein to unravel the argument. Sue Nelson, BBC News.
Well, England's cricketers may have failed to capture the public imagination